Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rest and Recovery Podcast. So today on this one, I was able to have an interview with Brian Rosetti. He is a former D1 cross-country and track athlete at St. Joe's University in Philly, where I actually spent some time at school there for 1 year. And Brian is the founder of the Run Smart project. He is the co-creator of the VDOT Calculator and the VDOT coaching platform. And if you're not familiar with that, that was a collaboration with the legendary coach Jack Daniels, who put together this program and the tool to really enable coaches and runners, regardless of your experience in running, whether you're just starting out or been doing it for a long time, to give you a common denominator to assess your current state. That's what the VDOT Calculator can do. Brian gets into the how and why that's important when it comes to fitness and running for individuals on their own or for coaches to be able to properly create effective programming that create that just enough stress so you can continue to grow and adapt and become a faster and better runner. So hope you enjoy. Remember to share, like, and give us a review. We'll be grateful for the reviews and sharing this. So enjoy. All right, before we jump into the episode, just wanted to share some information about Anchor. It's a great free platform for starting out a podcast. It's what I've been using, and it was a great turnkey solution for me to be able to focus on the primary mission of my podcast and not worry as much about how to get the word out, where to post, things of that nature. Anchor takes care of that for you. They distribute, they set up a platform that is easy to use with lots of tutorials. They give recommendations and coaching on how to even interview on your podcast to get you started. So I would encourage you to look into it, download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now, on to the episode. All right, welcome to another episode of the Rest and Recovery Podcast. And today with me, I have Brian Rosetti, founder of the Run Smart project. He's also head coach of the New York Flyers, which is one of the largest clubs in New York City. So, Brian, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the time. Wanted to kind of dig into the Run Smart project, what it is, the mission behind that, and I guess foundationally the VDOT Calculator, which is kind of a core tenet or tool to the group. But I've been aware of VDOT for probably about 10 years, and it's definitely been one of a number of tools that's been helpful for my running development. I don't always follow it, and when I do, I regret it. But before we dig into that, let's give a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I ran at Zapp Fitness post-collegiately. When I left St. Joseph's, I competed there for 5 years. I graduated, but I had some injuries freshman year, so I redshirted, came back and did a 5th year of indoor and outdoor track. And I was getting better every year. I think this goes back to probably 7th grade. Every single year I was improving right till 5th. Just kind of waiting for that big moment, maybe where I was going to see a big improvement curve. But that kept me motivated over the years. And when I graduated at St. Joe's, I was really just curious how much further this can go. And so I got into Zapp Fitness. They accepted me into the program and was fortunate enough to get their support. I was down there for 2 years. That's in Boone, North Carolina. So I trained with some really good runners, was exposed to different influences, different athletes, different coaches while competing post-collegiately at Zapp. Improved my first year again at Zapp, and then had a big setback at the end of my second year with a sacral stress fracture. And that sort of, I guess, is the beginning of the end of my post-collegiate career. Was sort of devastated. It was a long time that I had been training at that point and was focused on trying to make the Olympic trials and like I said, see how fast I can go. And the mile was my focus, the 1500, the mile.
Okay.
And so I left Zapp and I was sort of a little bit disconnected, becoming a little disconnected from the sport. And then once I got over my injury and started running again, that's when I became focused on coaching and getting into coaching. In large part, I graduated college and I wasn't sure. Well, I guess I should say by my junior year of college, I knew that my major was something that I did not want to pursue anymore. And I kind of felt like I was stuck on that path and had no option to change paths at that point. So I kind of put my head down, finished out my running career, and then was kind of unsure of how to proceed, with a career at that point. And I just naturally gravitated towards coaching. I think in large part because of my coach at Zapp, Pete Ray, was such a big and positive influence on me in terms of working with athletes. His passion for individualizing training was a huge influence on me. And like I said, I also met a lot of coaches and athletes through that experience. And so I decided one night just to start this online coaching business and sort of drew up the business plan. I was living with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and had no place to live and nothing to do. So I quickly all I was doing was training in New York City and drew up this business plan, and then went to a couple of my Zapp teammates and said, "Hey, do you want to do this with me?" Guys that I trusted. And that's how it started. That's how the Run Smart project started, just by email, really simple website, collected people's info, connected them with coaches, and they started working mostly by email and over the phone. And that was it. Really simple.
Yeah. So that kind of started the online coaching career for you.
Yeah, that was 2006, 2007 is when we actually got started. It was a few months of sort of getting it together. And, but yeah, it's been a long time.
It's kind of fun to hear. Like, it sounds like, like all of us, we have kind of those ups and downs, but able to take a passion of yours and evolve it into a career path. Because it sounds like, I could somewhat relate, graduate college with a degree and you're like, now what? So when it came to the influences, you said you had a couple of positive influences, Pete, on how did you kind of devise your coaching philosophy? What were some of those influences from a programming perspective?
Yeah, so when we started Zapp, I was heavily influenced by Pete. Pete was a big Arthur Lydiard guy and periodization, and I bought into it at the time and thought it was interesting. I don't know that I thrived under it as an athlete. To me, it was a huge transition, and it took me a while. I don't remember having a good workout. That entire first year at Zapp, it took me a long time to transition and get used to it. And it was a lot of higher mileage, lots of volume. I felt like I had more 800 speed in college, even though I wasn't really fast enough to compete at the top level. I was probably better suited for 3K, 5K, but my coach at St. Joe's had me doing a lot of 800s and short, fast work, a lot of speed work throughout the year. So, and then Zapp was a huge transition, like I said. But what stuck with me more was just the individualization, really to our detriment sometimes. I felt like where we moved to work out with an elite group, and we'd show up sometimes and it'd be 5 guys doing 5 different workouts. And
Oh, wow.
we were hungry to work together in this remote environment. And sometimes that's how individualized it was. And he took it seriously in terms of really catering to the individuals. I had a teammate who ran at Brown who I think came out of there with maybe a 340, 1500 PR. And he was only running 20, 30 miles a week because he just couldn't stay healthy. So Pete had him doing a ton of cross training and was really creative on how to keep this guy healthy and keep him down there. I mean, they committed a lot of resources to really helping this individual. So that's what stuck with me. And when we started Run Smart, it wasn't necessarily you coach this way. It was just really look at the individual, not just how fast they run, but are they working full time? Are they a mother of 6 kids and work? And what are the other stresses, that might factor into how you would train them individually? And this is before Jack got involved. So initially it was just it was a little more of an art than a science, and really just trying to cater to the individual and being responsive to them.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting distinction. I mean, at least it sounds like, how did you grow up with the training? Because it was kind of a one size fits all. Everybody had the same pace, maybe a couple of people based on groupings, at least for the high school cross country, and you hung on for dear life.
Yeah, exactly. So, high school was different. I was generally the better runner of the team. So, unfortunately, the coaches really didn't know what they were doing. They were open about it. I was lucky to have an older brother who ran Division I. So that had its pluses and minuses. Pluses was that I knew I had some idea of how to train. The minus is that I really knew how much the coaches didn't know how to train us. So that was discouraging, and also kind of created a negative mindset about, why are we doing this, or we should be doing this, and always questioning what we were doing.
Yeah.
But high school was really limited. I mean, you're talking 20 miles a week, 25 miles a week. No real understanding of how to train different systems. And it was just more off talent and try and get as much running in as I could. And then in college, it was sort of not get thrown to the wolves, but it was really, I was on scholarship trying to prove myself, trying to keep up with upperclassmen, that I belonged, that I should be beating them, and was not recovering, and had a stress fracture early, major Achilles injury early, just really suffered from repetitive stress injuries. We weren't doing, this is really before a lot of the great strength and nutrition information came out too. I mean, we really weren't, I was in the weight room bench pressing and, doing some pull-ups and push-ups, but this idea of like core strength and functional strength was not, it wasn't even on the horizon at that point, so yeah.
What I can remember from high school is, I think it was my senior year, we might've started doing circuit training. And that was like the extent of strength, and mindset was, you're going to weigh yourself down with any kind of, it's like not going to build up muscle mass, but the mindset is completely shifted in just a short time on the value of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, no, totally. I wish, obviously everyone in hindsight wishes they had that info at the time, but even at Zapp, I mean, we were starting to do, we had a more official strength training program that was a little bit more functional at Zapp, and that was super helpful to me and keeping me healthy for longer periods of time, I think. But we, so that was a big part of the routine. But definitely the idea now, I think just some flow track videos when they started coming out, when you'd see the elites and some of the stuff they were doing was eye-opening, like, wow.
Yeah.
Whether it's just balancing or skipping, things like that, hopping, stuff like that. That pretty simple stuff that was just more functional than what we used to do.
Yeah. And it just kind of that functional movement and just simple tasks repeated over and over again on a daily basis. And even not even high intensity. Like you said, the skipping or the ball foot hop and little things like that to get that muscle memory.
Yeah, no, totally.
What was that evolution? So you mentioned Jack Ryan and VDOT. So how was that evolution and engaging with him?
Yeah, so Jack, so I knew of Jack. I had the book. I had not really read into it until after I left Zapp. And so fortunately, my teammate at Zapp moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, not too long after I left, and started connecting with the running community there. And this was really early on in the scene in Flagstaff before it sort of blew up and became more of a mecca for elite runners. And so Vince Sherry, who's my co-founder at RunSmart, was close with Jack Daniels. And we also brought on Mike Smith, who's now the coach, former coach at Georgetown, who's now the coach at NAU. Mike was one of the initial RunSmart project coaches. Vince brought him on. Mike was working with Jack at the High Altitude Center through NAU University. And they closed the High Altitude Center, I want to say 2009, 2010. I don't know the exact date. I forget. And then we basically just convinced Jack to give this online coaching thing a shot. He wasn't so intrigued initially. Jack likes to work with the team. I mean, that was his history of working with cross-country teams and being in practice. And a lot of people had tried to get him into the online coaching and do some interesting stuff with technology and VDOT, and he resisted for a long time. And for whatever reason, we convinced him, and he trusted us. And so it was really myself, Mike, and Vince that got him on board, got him comfortable. And then we started integrating VDOT into our methodology, our philosophy, our approach. And then we built the calculator. That was the first, our first stab at sort of building out some technology to give runners more tools on how to train at the right paces. And so we launched the VDOT running calculator on the RunSmart project site. And that's just been huge. I mean, we've got thousands of users all across the world that are constantly using it. It's now available on iOS and Android as well. And so that was our basically our history with Jack and how it initially got started. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm a user of the VDOT for a little while now, and it's kind of nice tool to have another metric to see improve gradually over time. But can you unpack a little bit the calculator? So what is it? What's the intent behind it? How does that fold into the coaching and the personalization?
Yeah, so I always love this plot or this graph in Jack's book, and he uses this at a lot of his clinics where you see different individual runners where he plots a VO2 max over a graph of running speed or velocity. And basically it's showing you that these three individuals who have run very similar 3K times have very different VO2 max scores. And so basically that's accounting for, in large part, their running economies. And so what Jack tried to do with his study and research was come up with an easier way to basically score someone's running ability and allow them to do it through speed over a certain distance or in many cases a race result. So as much as you can get it from a 5K result, you can really, anything that's longer than 10, 11, or 12 minutes roughly, if you know the distance that you covered over that amount of time, we can score your VDOT or give you a VDOT score. But obviously through the calculator, most people are using race results, whether it's a mile up to a marathon. But it can be done over any distance. It's speed over a certain distance is the measurement. And then that gives you a VDOT score, which is a measure of your current running ability. So what you're trying to do is always punch in a result or a speed over a certain distance or a race result, as I said, that represents your current fitness. And that score allows you to see appropriate training intensities based on what you're trying to achieve. And when I say that, is it to strengthen your heart muscle? Is it to improve your endurance? Is it to improve your aerobic power? Is it to improve your economy? So we have different training intensities to achieve each of those different objectives or benefits. So once you know your VDOT score, it gives you some guidelines on how fast you should be training. And common feedback is, the easy pace feels slow, and because I think most people probably run too fast on their easy days. And
right.
The beauty of VDOT and what Jack did was he's pinpointing the fastest you need to run in order to achieve that objective. So if all you're trying to do is recover or strengthen your heart or increase the mitochondria in the muscles, then you only need to run this fast. It's just a percentage of your heart rate max. And anything faster is unnecessary, or you're maybe changing what the physiological outcome might be from that workout. So, and that goes back to his point of always making sure that athletes understand what the purpose of their run or their workout is. And if that's just to go clear your head, that's great. That's separate. Or if it's to go out and hurt, then that's something else. But if it's to recover, then you should run at this pace. If it's to improve your threshold or your endurance, it should be this pace. And so that's what we're trying to do is really get that information into the hands of runners as easily as possible.
Yeah. So it kind of just gives you a personalized script, at least something to start, right? A directionally correct script to start from, especially if you're a beginner, on, some target pacing so you don't overdo it.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't need to go into a lab and do a VO2 max test. I mean, you can go do a time trial on your track, or I can step out on the road here and go run as hard as I can for 10 minutes. And if I know the distance, I can give myself a VDOT score, and then I know all my training paces. So then I can start organizing my training. The other thing it does is it equates performances. It doesn't predict. Some people like to use it as a prediction, where they might run a 5K and say, well, this is predicting I can run this for a marathon. But it's really just equating performances physiologically. So this 5K result is equal to this 10K result. So in some instances, it's a good benchmark for people. So if they've never run a marathon before, but they've run a 10K, they can at least have some sort of benchmark or idea where, wow, if I can train well for a marathon now, then in order to equal my 10K performance for a much longer race, which is hard, right? Because the longer you're racing, then you've got the terrain is more a factor, the mental, approach is more a factor. Nutrition, temperature, wind, all those things are going to play a greater factor into your results. So in many cases, if you score, let's say, a 50 VDOT for your 5K result, many will score a lower number for their marathon. And that's just because of all those different factors. Pacing is another factor, in a marathon. In 5K, you might be able to get away with, poor pacing a little bit more. In a marathon, that your pace can exponentially drop after crossing that line a little bit early in the race. So
Yeah, you can't recover that.
Yeah. There's no coming back.
No.
So yeah, I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah, it does. It does. So like you're saying, the tool is exactly that, a tool to help you understand kind of your own personal training and where you're trying to go. But it sounds like the goals are also important to understand what your fitness goal is.
Yeah, for sure. I think big misuse of it is that they want to break 20 minutes in a 5K. So they put in 20 minutes and they get their VDOT score and their training paces, and then they start training at that level. And they might be in 23-minute shape, or they might have never broken 23 minutes. So that's just a quick recipe to get hurt. People think that I want to run this, so I need to start running at that level right now, and it doesn't work that way. I'm not an exercise scientist, but it's just, according to Jack, it's you train at your current fitness level, your body adapts, and then you could take on more stress. That's really when you see the improvement, and you proceed in a very measured way, where you start to add in a little more stress, where it might be, okay, now you're at a new VDOT, so your paces are getting faster. You're more economical. You can handle faster paces, et cetera. So start to update your VDOT, or maybe you increase your mileage because you're able to run higher volume and you start to improve from that increased volume. So it can be done in different ways, but common misconception is that I want to be at this level, so I need to train there. And some people do it for fun, and we can't stop them because they just want to know what it's like. But we don't encourage that.
But it's really an assessment of your current state. Current fitness gives you an idea of what you may be capable of. Like you said, it spits out, if you did a 5K number, your marathon potential, but there's a lot of assumed performance, like the training and proper training in there.
Yeah, you might be able to score a 50 VDOT for a 5K result, and you're running 20 miles a week. But you go out and run a marathon on 20 miles a week, you might score 10 points lower with your marathon result, and it's just by matter of fact that you didn't train well enough for a full marathon. Like I said, so that's the challenge. Some people score higher VDOTs for longer races. It's just by nature where they excel, whether it's mentally or physiologically. But it's, for the most part, it gets hard. It's a challenge to keep that score as the distance goes up. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, the different variables, and what's the old football saying, any given Sunday. Yeah. So it's like each race is, it may be a bad day, or all those other variables can significantly influence.
Yeah, and you can graph. You can also chart. It's nice. You can chart your scores for different results, and it sort of gives you a quick snapshot of where your strengths are, and that might inform future training. So if you're struggling to maintain your VDOT for 10K, if your 10K VDOT is much lower than your 5K VDOT, then maybe you're not doing enough threshold work. So you can really look at training. Why am I falling off here? The pacing's solid. I ran it on a good course. I thought, I ran pretty well. So then maybe it's an indicator that the training, you're not adjusting well for a 10K race in your training. So it can also inform that well too.
So that kind of circles back to the coaching element, right? The services y'all support. So what, you kind of touched on it, but what's the motivating factor for you when it comes to coaching? What is that you love about it?
Yeah. So, I'm a competitive person. And so as my own running ambitions have kind of gone away, I think it's now transferred into the athletes I coach. And And so their success, is what keeps me excited and keeps me motivated. But that also has transferred now into the business. When we built the calculator, we then built VDOT 02, which is the coaching platform. And initially it was the Run Smart project, customer training calendar, essentially, where our coaches would upload training for our athletes. And then we moved away from that. We turned it into an open platform. And so thousands of coaches across the world use VDOT to help them plan training for their athletes. So we sort of broke down that wall and opened up the app to anyone. It's free for athletes. It's coaches can subscribe to it. So we've got hundreds of coaches across the world that are working with athletes on VDOT. So essentially it's a calendar application, sort of like a Training Peaks, but the VDOT paces are built in. So if a coach is working with athletes on it, they can schedule, mile repeats or a 5-mile run, and those paces are already built in. They don't have to calculate paces. It automatically populates on the calendar, saves, and then coach can communicate with the athlete all on the platform. It pulls in GPS data so coach can see what was prescribed, what the athlete actually did right next to each other. And then they can comment and the coach can make adjustments. They can update their VDOT and future paces really easily. So we've really been focused now more on trying to be the best coaching platform out there and giving coaches the tools they need to just better manage their athletes. So I just spoke with a high school coach this morning. He's got 75 athletes and he wants to continue to individualize their training. But there's 75 of them. And
that's a lot of people to manage through.
That's hard to do. And so he didn't even know the VDOT platform existed. He's been using Jack's book for years. And now he's excited because he can build out their season and then literally publish to all 75 athletes, and it goes into their calendars. And each athlete has their own pace. So then he can sort them by group. So when they have practices, he could say, group 1, group 2, group 3, step up. And everyone's showing up to practice with their paces. They know with their targets. So, compared to my college days, it was you jumped in the group and you tried to hang on. And my senior, the seniors might have been right at their threshold, getting all the benefit. And I'm beyond my threshold trying to hang on, trying to do VO2 max, mile repeats. And eventually I'm just anaerobic and I might be getting mentally tougher hanging on, but I'm not getting any physiological benefit out of that.
Yeah. If anything, potentially negative because of just the overtraining, or as I've heard the term, overtraining or under recovered, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my focus and really trying to, my motivation, my competitive, side is really trying to come out through the technology now on the platform and really trying to transfer. That's been Jack's mission. His whole life is just transferring the research. He got into this whole thing because his worst event was running when he was in the Olympics. He was a modern pentathlete and 2-time medalist in the Olympics. And he always says, I got it. I became a running coach because running was my worst event. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So he pretty much transformed the running industry, or one of the key godfathers of it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, he's been focused on transferring it. The reason he wrote the book, he said, it's because he couldn't coach and teach because he was getting calls all day from coaches asking him to write up training plans. And so he'd be faxing plans and ideas and writing up programs. And then eventually he's like, I should just publish the book so I don't have to keep doing this. And so that's what he did. And then we, like I said, from the book, I've been trying to do the technology to scale it. And it's cool because the book is now translated into like 9 or 10 languages. So we're seeing adoption across the world now. And this all dates back to him realizing that his coach had no idea how to train them for running performance back in the back in the 60s. So it's been an incredible story.
Yeah. So as a coach, you coach a continuum, right? Anywhere from beginners up to elites within the New York Flyers?
Yeah, so the Flyers, I'm the head coach of the club in New York, and it's mainly marathon runners, and it's a wide range of recreational runners, from beginners to guys who are just under 3 hours in the marathon. We've got a very competitive Masters women's team, specifically in the 50s and 60s age range. And, I would say very competitive, even, nationally. We've got some really standout Masters women runners. But initially it was an interesting match because they were interested in working with us, but it's a very social club. I mean, these individuals love to run and they do lots of marathons. But in many cases, the focus isn't so much on how fast can I run. And our business is very geared towards like improvement, setting PRs, and let's do this as efficiently as possible. And so it was an interesting match at first because we brought in technology, we brought in this very like sciencey approach, and at first it was like VDOT, what are you guys talking about? And so there was some selling and there was some transition, but now I have to say, like, you have 6-hour marathoners showing up to practice, and it's like homework to them. They love that they have a purpose, they have a pace that works for them too. It's not just, hey, go out and, we're doing 800s today, and here's the effort, good luck. That's not fair to them, sometimes if you're not careful about how long someone's maintaining their VO2 max pace. For some individuals, an 800 might take less than 3 minutes at their max pace. And for some, it could take, over 5 minutes. And so how many do they do versus the faster runners? So we were very careful about that approach and really explaining this to them. And now the club, our programs sell out. Our New York programs sell out really quickly. We don't even market them. They sell out as soon as they go up. So we manage all the training through the VDOT app, like other coaches do with their clubs and teams. And it's been great. We're able to provide great feedback. Like I said, with GPS, we pull in Garmin. And then one of the cool things we did in the last year was if I write a workout on someone's calendar, the workout and paces get pushed to their Garmin watch. And so they can start it on the watch. And it's like a real-time, pacing guidance.
Pace guide. Yeah. That's awesome. That's great.
So you even get alerts. Some people don't like it. You can turn it off, but you get alerts, if you're outside your pace range. Some individuals will say, listen, I was not motivated to do that workout. And then the watch started beeping at me. And it's the only thing that got me through the workout. Some people are like, I was going to throw my watch in the river, if it didn't stop beeping.
Right.
But you could turn it off in settings. And I think for the most part, people like that you can, and coaches do too. That workout's right in their watch. It makes it convenient. And then it automatically syncs back to their calendar. And then a coach could say, hey, this is too fast. Look at your heart rate here. Or what was going on here? Why the paces were too slow, too fast, whatever it was, you got to back off, and allows that feedback to happen remotely, which is nice.
Yeah, and it turns into micro adjustments rather than just trying to recreate the wheel every time you have to come up. And I know for me, whenever I've used coaching or some of the platforms tools, it eliminates the thinking, and it's probably one less barrier for me to not go run.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to keep it simple. I think sometimes the platforms there's a lot of tracking of data, and I think there's a lot with wearables, and they're tracking so much data, and a lot of times these athletes are just like, what am I supposed to do with this? What does it mean? It's just too much, and we're trying to keep it simple. Just like, here's your pace. Try and stick to it. Here are some guidelines, some feedback. We can make quick adjustments, but try and keep it as simple as possible. I'll just always train people based on their current fitness. And if they're not improving, then that helps coaches, troubleshoot. What is it then? They're at the right pace. Are they not sleeping? Are they not eating properly? Are we not doing enough of this type of work? So that's the key for us, is just kind of backing in like that and trying to keep it as simple as possible.
That's great. Yeah. And like you said, it's a personalized one size fits all.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I mean, I that's a great point, Scott. I like that. I think that it makes me think about, though, that some people will say, well, I don't follow. I'm not a Daniels guy. I hear that sometimes. And I think that can be fair, but I think that sometimes people conflate Jack with other, top coaches, the ones that have had a lot of success. And I don't think for us, Jack really has this methodology. It's more like basic principles. If you're running this many miles, then generally the long run should represent this percentage. And if you're doing threshold work, you should only do this percentage of work at threshold pace that's representative of how much the total week of running you're doing. So he's kind of setting guidelines. He's not saying do these specific workouts. These are the only workouts. It's more of a flexible. It's a methodology that the coaches can really navigate within and with their own styles and workouts. But it's really more based in physiology. This is threshold. I think that's generally universally accepted. And he's more focused on how you're getting the benefit and how to get the most benefit out of every workout. And that's it. It's not, he's not trying to say these are the workouts that you do. And so I think that's important to state, that it's not, that it is flexible in that sense. It's not, this is how you coach necessarily, like you said. So.
Yeah. And yet at the end of the day, I want runners. Anybody can run, right? I've coached youth, and they're like, "Oh no, I'm not a runner." Well, if you put your foot in front of the other, you are a runner. And I think this tool kind of helps anyone kind of be encouraged where they are, because it's your own personal goal, but then you can find a great community within the running community. I think that's one thing that I've always enjoyed with cross country, and it's just like such a big, welcoming community.
Yeah, that's great. We had, unfortunately in New York, we lost one of our club members to COVID-19.
Oh no.
Yeah. And, but it just, as tragic as it was, to me, again, it was just another reminder of how fortunate we are to be in the running community, and like just the outpouring of support amongst the club, and why we are part of the club, and just how strong the running community is, and what a family it is. And it's special. It's different. Like you said, it's a good point that you made.
Yeah. Well, sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
And, to your point, it's, if anything, now's the opportunity to band together wherever we are.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of coming up on time. I am grateful for the time, Brian. I did want to close out with a few questions for you, personal. But one is, what are you reading right now? Audible counts. Audible's okay.
I actually, where is it? Is it right here? So it's How to Change Your Mind. I don't know if you've heard of this, Michael Pollan.
No. How to change your mind?
Yeah. That's a little nuts. So it's basically science of, what they're learning with, like psychedelics and consciousness and how they're treating, seeing some results, in clinical trials with people suffering from addiction and depression. And, but it's so funny because when I initially saw the title, I was like, how to change your mind. Like, that's a good skill to have,
personal development or something, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I've got a staff. I want to be able to like keep them, on track to where I think we should be moving here with the business. And, but then I thought it was cool. I saw a podcast with, was it Paul Stamets, who's like a guy, mycelium guy. He's a mycologist. And I don't know how I got into it, but it just was fascinating. Him talking about fungi and nature and how it plays a role in our environment, and all this stuff just blew my mind. And then I came across this book in a bookstore not too long before things started shutting down. And so I was just like, I want to check this out. So that's what I'm into right now.
I'm gonna have to look into that one. I've heard of CBD now, being used, but the psychedelics, that's definitely one that's pushing the envelope.
It's wild.
Yeah. So what are you listening to right now, music or podcast?
Music. So I'm a Pearl Jam guy, so I'm into Gigaton, the new album that just came out, and I love it. It's been good timing for me. That's been, we just launched a podcast actually with VDOT. So I've been, I listened to the Rambling Runner, which is a big running podcast. I think it's impressive what he's been able to do, and telling different stories of the running community, not just like elites and standouts, but really profiling recreational runners and some of the amazing things they've done and how they've sort of stayed in the sport. So I've been trying to dabble, nothing in particular, but we're certainly not, we haven't really picked up on the art of it yet, or I would say we're not the best at it yet, but we're trying our best to kind of profile members of the VDOT community and people like Jack, who have been a big part of the sport their entire life, and how they got into the sport, what it's meant to them, and some of the cool things that they're doing. So that's VDOT 02 at conversation pace.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. I'll definitely include that in the show notes for sure. I'll put that out there and take a listen.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Last question. What is your go-to rest and recovery method?
Well, I will say, I don't know. I mean, a specific method for me, to me, it's just sleep. And I know that maybe that's cliche. I don't know, but it's not obviously a method. But I just keep coming back to that more and more personally, not just in my athletics, but just sort of, in terms of my career and being productive and being a good parent.
Yes.
I keep coming back to how important it is to take care of myself first. Otherwise, I can't be a good coach or a good parent. And certainly my running, which comes last these days, unfortunately, it's taking a back seat, but like, I just can't. And I know some people can manage better than others when their sleep is inconsistent or inadequate, but I just keep coming back to this, that it's just the most important thing than anything. And also besides nutrition, we can do a whole podcast on or interview on nutrition. And I'm not a nutritionist, but me personally, meal timing is something that's really overlooked. Everyone's focused on how they're eating, what they're eating, and they keep overlooking meal timing and how that's so important. And just with the pandemic and just work and getting leaving New York City, I've struggled the last few weeks and just having a routine and getting into a solid routine and going long periods of time without eating and then having those big meals, it's a bad mix right now. So really trying to focus on that now for me has been important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on both, especially, sleep really, that was kind of a catalyst on starting the podcast, frankly, on my own challenges over time that I just kept bonking in life. It seemed like both in my fitness pursuits and then just life pursuits and family and all that, as simplistic and straightforward as it is, it's the foundation, really.
Yeah, my mind doesn't stop. It's hard for me to let go. It's hard for me to shut it down. It's I wanted to get in that book or I want to listen to that podcast, and now it's quiet and now I have the time to do it. And I'm just not sticking to that routine. And I think that's important. So as a coach, I definitely, try and instill that in my athletes. But I need a coach. I need someone keeping me accountable because I'm preaching it, but I'm not following it, especially at this time. It's been a struggle for me, totally.
Yeah, find consistency. I would encourage you. So shameless plug, but episode 4, we had a sleep coach on, Nick Lamb. And so he went through, and it was a really good practical and understanding of the science behind it, the physiology, plus some simple tactics to apply on how to incrementally improve, whether you're running your sleep habits.
That's great. Episode 4?
Yes, sir.
And what's his name again, Scott?
Nick Lamb with E on the end.
Nick Lamb with an E. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the online sleep coach.
Okay, cool.
So Brian, grateful for the time and appreciate it. Yeah. Have a great day.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Lots of great practical tips covered here today. And if you know someone who could get some value out of this episode, please share. Be super grateful. We're all about being well and improving our life. And so if someone can get value out of this, please remember to subscribe, review, and share. Again, grateful for you. Remember, be rested, be well.